So now my sort of call to the participants of the session. First of all, thank you so much for joining. We already have 27 of you, and I believe some more will be joining, which is fantastic. Thank you for active participation, despite we had a long, hard night yesterday. And please be active. So anything that you want to understand better, consult. You already heard some cases and so sort of try to make this session best. This is for you. So Tauno is there, Kirsti is there, Martina is there. So actually we have 3 professionals who are working on daily basis with these questions. And, Tauno, with Tauno's lead, I'm pretty sure we're going to have all the questions answered. So now I shut up. Tauno, let's over to you. And looking forward.
Yeah. As you remember from yesterday, my name is Tauno Kekäle. I come from a company called Merinova, which is a consulting company for the bigger and smaller companies in the region. We also fund or find funding for universities and cities and municipalities and various other organizations. We work a lot with European Union and European Union related topics. And now today I would try to figure out my idea of what is the regulatory background of the DEI in European Union. And I think really the background is somewhere in the French Revolution, which is about more or less 200 years ago. Since then, we have been thinking that Europe is a place that is fair and equal, and all the other places in the world are not as fair and equal as the Europeans are. The only problem is that we are actually not a Europe, like Ghana is not Africa. And if we say that we are Europe, then we anyway have 27 different ideas, plus all minority ideas, what Europe is. We have Europeans in France that come from West India islands. We have Europeans in Belgium that might come from Northern Africa. We have Europeans in Finland that are Swedish speakers, and we have Finns that are Finnish speakers, and we have some original tribe Sami up north in Finland, and those are Europeans also. And all of us are kind of people who are under this legislation and regulatory framework that European Union has built for us. They are an agreement-based organization where 27 countries have agreed to follow more or less similar rules, more or less similar principles. They share the same values and ideas and so on. And the shared ideas and values are in the declarations of human rights of the United Nations and other similar documents. This is a long list of documents that include the same idea of the right to equality before the law, which is important. Everybody should be treated the same in front of the law, and everybody should also be protected against discrimination. And this is a universal right that is recommended quite widely. Finally, in this paper, it says that the European Convention of the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms includes these ideas, and that is then signed by all the member states of the Union. Some years, some of the states remember this better, and some years they remember it a bit less. And then finally, like all the legislation in the world, it's becoming really a law only after it's taken into court, because the text in the law books and the directives and regulations can be implemented and interpreted in many different ways, depending a bit on the background. Already the translation of the same text to various languages creates sometimes problems. We have in the first ISO 9000 standard document, we had a problem in Finnish language. When we translated the representative of management, that must be the head of quality in a company. And in Finnish word, representative is edustaja, which is basically means instead of somebody. While the representative is a representative person of company's management in English. So in English version, they mean that somebody who really has decision-making power must be responsible. While in Finland, we thought, okay, we take somebody from the street and put that to stand there instead of. So the translation of one single word might make a big difference in how these laws really are implemented in real life. Further, in the European Union, the basic document of European Union, the treaty, says that everybody should have the liberty, democracy, respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. And then also the rule of law. People should be safeguarded by the rule of law rather than punished aimlessly back and forth. So whoever is breaking these principles of liberty, democracy, respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, that person should be punished by the rule of law according to the principle of the European Union. I'm warning you, it will be quite a lot of legislative text, so if you are still awake, that's good. If you have any questions thus far? Is Ausrin checking if there is any?
I'm checking the chat. Yes, absolutely. And I'm just going to check. And actually, in this time, because we have a smaller session, you also have all the possibility to unmute yourself and speak directly. Yeah. So, you can either raise a hand and then be called, but also feel free to open the microphone, because you can start the video and open the microphone. And we're going to keep this unless, of course, some issues occurs, but feel free to speak up. Tauno is here.
I'm just kind of following here, and then if somebody has something to say, you are allowed to be abrupt and say something, and I'll try to figure out if I have any answers somewhere in the back of my head. I cannot check in the internet in this short time. The Constitution of European Union, the Charter of Fundamental Rights, and the Lisbon Treaty, which is basically the Constitution of European Union, says that equality between men and women is a fundamental principle. It so happens that also the Finnish legislation starts with the equality between men and women. That is probably the biggest problem that we ever had in Europe. But later on we have got, like the United Nations has the amendments of right to kill people with guns and such. We have right to have freedom of discrimination based on sex, racial, ethnic origin, religion or belief, disability, age or sexual orientation. These are the two amendments that have come in after the basic constitution of European Union, which is not horribly old. It's from, I think, 1970s altogether, this Lisbon Treaty. Men and women should get equal pay for equal work of equal value. That is one quite important addition to the original treaty, and maybe the one that is mostly breached in the European Union system. So I think the Finns have quite a good record on that. I think we have in equal jobs, women have 84 cents or something, while men have €1. So we are about 15% of the equal pay from similar work. And nearly all the others are worse. So there is still much to do in even these constitutional rights that people have. Then we have a system in European Union where whatever the European Union gives out as a directive, the member states have said that they are sooner or later making it into law in the national legislation also. Because there's always the question of whether European Union has the time and possibility of taking these things into the court. And the national and regional courts are much closer to where the breaches of all the laws happen. So this is why we want to have into national laws. There are some directives that have to do with the equal treatment. Race equality directive has to do with the equal treatment of the people based on race and ethnicity. Then there's a Gender Goods and Services Directive, saying that people should have the access to similar goods and services, no matter whether they are women and men. A bit same idea as the equal pay for equal work. Then we have a directive of gender equality in employment. You should have always the best person selected into all open positions. This, of course, is very difficult when the companies are hiring people because they have their own criteria that they don't have to resolve, but the public jobs must have public criteria, and then they must take the best person. And if you are a woman that was not chosen and you are better than the man that was chosen, you can raise a case about this, and then the national or regional even court takes it up and makes a decision. This is called the recast directive, which is a bit strange wording. And then the self-employment directive that gives more or less similar rights also to people who are entrepreneurs and who are not working to anybody else. But all these directives become then over time national laws with more or less same content. And there is our example from Finland. We've already from somewhere in, there is a strange drop of wording, but it says tasa-arvo, which has this hyphen in the middle. This is equality in Finnish. We have the first law in 1996 that is still in use of this, that has to do with the equality between men and women in employment, and that also includes that we have to have a plan for every workplace, more than 30 persons, of the equal treatment in all possible work-related environments between men and women, and at least biannual, I think, is the current implementation of this. It says annually in the law, but biannual is enough. Biannual questionnaire to the 30 persons if anybody has encountered any harassment or bad treatment or inequality or in pay or something. And then it must be treated in the company, and the corrective action must be taken if there is some problems with this. And this law is from 96. The next law has to do with all the other equal groups, all the other groups that we are discussing in our project, people from different ethnicities, people with different disabilities, people from different sexual orientations, church orientations, religious orientations and such. And that doesn't have this obligatory checking of the situation in the company, but typically we have a tendency of putting also these kind of harassment and unequal treatment questions in the obligatory questionnaire that has actually to do only with the equality between men and women. And then we have a very, very, very old criminal law that has had new chapters in the law discussing possible punishments to people who are not following the laws of equality. I can say that if you don't do the biannual questionnaire, because it is not checked in any way, nothing bad happens to you if not your co-workers tell the police. And nobody will come and check whether the questionnaire is done. Also, as I said, we have 84% salary for women of that the men have, and nothing bad happens to those companies either. Actually, the biggest situation where we have the legal action is the employment of people, when somebody has decided to employ a male person or a female person who is not the best of the applicants to public positions. Very often they either have to retake the decision and fire the person that they took there illegally and take in the applicant who was the best applicant if he or she still wants after all this mess in the court, or sometimes even have to pay half a year's salary or 1 year's salary to the person who's been mistreated. But this is an example of the European Union directive, how it has become a law in Finland in maybe 13, 14 years later. It takes a while to formulate the things in Finnish, and especially when we have to have the law both in Finnish and Swedish in Finland. We have two national languages that have to have all the legislation in. So it takes some time. The EU directive was from the year 2000 more or less, and we had the law, the equality law, yhdenvertaisuuslaki, from 2014. So it had a couple of versions that were not complete in before the 2014, but it might take 14 years for the directive to become national law. Still no questions? No? Good. Then I continue. I have here the sustainability thingy that is maybe our main talking point in the DEI4SME project. The sustainability approach of European Union, the Green Deal and all related things not only have to do with the transition to sustainability and not only have to do with our ambition to save the world and be the global leader in sustainability issues, but it also has to do with our idea of having a very resilient financial sector where the scandals would not hinder any of our brands from working. And it just happens that a lot of these scandals that are taking down companies' competitiveness have to do with the treatment of people in other countries. And then within Europe also the idea of inclusiveness. Everybody should feel welcome in Europe because Europe is the place where we have the biggest bias between old people who are many and young people who are not so many. So we should make everybody who comes to Europe becomes a European citizen or has a resident permit here. We should make them feel included in our aims towards the sustainability and the contribution global ambitions. So this has brought a couple of new directives then, and the one that we are mostly interested in SMEs and company life is the ESG reporting directive. And that is a quite new directive that has become a law in itself in all the EU countries concerning big companies, 250 people employed or more, or international subsidies of big companies that work in Europe for 150 people and more. And that is in force from 1st of January, so that means that the whole year 24 we have had obligation to follow the companies, and now beginning of 25 the report from all the negative occurrences from these companies must be made public in the beginning of 25. I think they have half a year on them to write the reports now. The meaning is to help the investors and civil society organizations, consumers and other stakeholders to evaluate the sustainability performance companies. So we might have stakeholder campaigns against companies that we know are treating people badly, either here in Finland or in some of the company suppliers that they are enjoying, or some upwards company partners that are selling our stuff, or in anywhere. So this big company will be in our minds held responsible. We have a history of campaigns against, for example, Nestle, the foodstuff company, of this and that treatment of people in one country or other, milk surrogate use in Africa for whatever problems that it causes for small children and so on. But we will have help from the European Union now in gaining these insights into the activities of the big companies all around the world. And this is then one major part of the Green Deal. The aim of making Europe in a place that is very inhabitable and welcoming to all kinds of persons who want to work for this vision that we have. Yeah, the reporting directive says something like that. Directive EU, lots of numbers of the European Parliament and of the Council from a day, amending some previous regulation and so on as regards corporate sustainability reporting. And it is an ESG reporting, environmental problems that the company has faced in its activities, societal or social level problems, and governance problems. If the company has destroyed some lake with some oil, for example, that's an environmental problem somewhere in its value chain, from the smallest suppliers to the last seller of the products before the customer takes them. If the company has not paid the legal taxes, in some companies avoiding the taxes in a way that is against the law, there are lots of legal ways of avoiding taxes by moving the money back and forth between the companies, various countries of activity. So if it's done illegally, then the company must report of that. And of course, when they report, they make it visible for everybody, investors alike, the consumers and so on, consumers organizations, Greenpeaces and such, and then the customers and investors can avoid the company as much as they can and want. And then the social part, the S in the ESG, that has to do with the human rights of the workers and human rights of the consumers and human rights of all the social groups. This is what these companies do for people. If it's shown that they have caused, by letting out some gas somewhere, caused the death of people, that's one of a social problem. If it's shown that they are systematically treating some of the workers badly in some country, somewhere in the supply chain, that's also a social problem. And if there is a sexual harassment event in the company headquarters, that's also a social problem. So the company should report all of these from the year 24 by the end of June this year 25. And the report should be visible enough and checked by accountants that it's correct. And if the report is not correct, of course, more punishments will happen later on. This obligation to make a system then leads into obligations also for the small companies, and this is where our SMEs are. They are not currently a subject for this law, European directive, but they are suspect to report their activities to the big companies so that they can report on to the European Union and the customers and the financiers. And this is so because otherwise there could be all kinds of problems in a supply chain, and the big company would be responsible for that. Anyway, in our minds, we small customers and small people all the world, we don't really understand what is the difference if the big company is treating somebody badly in Nepal, or if the Nepalese supplier is treating people badly there. If the product anyway, the t-shirts anyway come with Merinova logo to Finland. And this is why we need to have an idea of the whole chain. The big companies want to have a visibility through the whole chain, so they are not put to be responsible for something that they didn't know about. This is very similar to the ISO 9000 and ISO 14000, the environmental management systems, CE marking systems, and so on. The companies want the quality of the product to be good by checking the quality of the product at the supplier and checking the quality of the product at the supplier of the supplier. And the same way this responsibility flows backwards and forwards in the chain of supply and chain of delivery. So what the companies in our region are often doing, they are relenting into a system called EcoVadis. I checked this with Kirsi, I didn't remember the name. EcoVadis is a kind of self-reporting system website or frame where the companies can put in all kinds of activities and all kinds of systems that they are running, and then they are auditable by third parties, so some external accountant or quality auditor can come and check the correctness of this reporting against what they know of the company. This works very much as all the management systems, and all the management systems surprisingly work quite a lot like boiling spaghetti. You take a bag of spaghetti and then you have on the back of the bag you says take 3 liters of water and put the spaghetti in and put it on boil and check that the water is 100 degrees, it's boiling all the time, and then you check with a clock 8 minutes. This is the main process described in a short way. There's somebody's hand up, I think, Auxine.
Yes, I do, Tauno. I have one small thing, if I may interrupt you.
Of course.
Fantastic. So if I could share the screen, it's a super interesting, and I love the way you are presenting this complex legal matters in such an attractive way. But if you stop sharing for a moment, we have this treasure hunt happening, and I want to share the next clue.
Surprise.
Surprise, surprise. So those who are participating in the treasure hunt, here you are, guys. This is your second clue now, and this second clue is number 12 out of the 15. So please take your time to write down, because it's really, really important, because it's not coming back again. So it's the third piece from the end. Are we ready? And by the way, everyone can participate, as you remember, not only the student teams, but also everyone, right? So, Tauno, do you have it noted?
I have noticed this one and the one yesterday, but I have already missed. If you say this is number 3, I've already lost one.
No, meaning number 3 from the end, because it's 12 out of 15.
Okay.
So there has been only 2 so far. You have the 2. Okay. Brilliant. So I'll stop sharing now. I hope you got it. And Tauno, please go ahead.
And now I have to find the right button again. And where am I? There, maybe. Yeah. Is this more or less correct? This is even too correct. It's one too many. But this is the one that you were seeing the last with the spaghetti thingy. I didn't take a picture of the spaghetti, but I because I'm quite used to waving my hands and explaining the boiling of spaghetti to people of all kinds of origin. If you are not fond of spaghetti, you can think of boiling rice. It works in the same way. If we are making the spaghetti according to the process that is on the back of the bag, we have a documented process flow. And this is what the big companies must know from the small companies, not because they are interested in how they boil spaghetti, but they need to know where the risks are in that process flow. And that is the second point here in my spaghetti example. We must identify all the phases where there is a risk of inequality, of maltreatment of workers, or forging of records, business records or tax systems, or if there is an environmental hazard danger. And we should check them. So in the spaghetti example, there is a possibility of the spaghetti not becoming al dente, which probably comes from not too hot, not hot enough water, or not precisely the correct length of the boiling time. So you have to check these 2 things at least continuously in your process. Continuously means often enough, so that you know the water is 101 degrees and the boiling is 8 minutes precisely, as it says on the package. For the maltreatments and inequalities, we have in the Finnish legislation the annual or biannual survey, where we check if the people in a company have been the subject to any of these kind of unequal treatments. And they typically, mostly, as I said, are in the employment stage. employment of people not being employed even if they are the best person for the task, but they can be in many kind of tasks later on. The next more typical is equal pay question. People don't get same salary even if they're doing the same thing. And these are coming now from another EU directive. The salaries should be open to whomever wants to check them. So this far we don't have the possibility of checking the salaries in an ongoing process of activities of the company. But when the openness directive or the salaries comes, then everybody can come and check if Martina has the same salary as me for same kind of work. So we identify, we describe the risks, and then we check the risks continuously. And if we have seen any problems occur in the process, then we have to go into corrective action. In the spaghetti example, it unfortunately means that you throw away the spaghetti and start anew. If you have had it, instead of 8 minutes, you have ended up watching the news on TV and there's something interesting going on, you have the spaghetti boiled for 28 minutes. It's not edible anymore after that. So you have to throw it away and put a new one on. So this is the corrective action, and you have to report it even if you have corrected it. The big company must be able to report that the small company that is supplying the big company has had this kind of problem this year and corrected it. Because otherwise, if you don't have any idea that it's corrected, then it can continue along. So documentation of all this process flow, not maybe daily. With the spaghetti boiling, you can write down every day that it was Tauno who made the spaghetti and on that day, and it was good. But in the questions of equality, you have to follow, for example, the hirings of the people. What kind of people there have been, how equally you have treated them, what process you have had in evaluating their performances. Some of the companies and some of the public organizations have started to hire people without any pictures and names in the application, just the CV and the career this far. And that process then is whatever you're showing, even with the list of people, without endangering the GDPR system of people's backgrounds being public, that you have followed the equal treatment of all the persons in the evaluation of the applicants. You have to have this collection of documents. You typically do it in the same as you do in your ISO 9000 or ISO 14000 management system, or then you go to this EcoVadis system where you report it separately. And then finally the documentation is then stored for the third-party audit. Currently it's not really sure, to me anyway, who is going to be a kind of accepted third-party audits. There was a European Union group of legislators, lawyers, that were discussing this still, I think in September last year, who they will be accepting to check these big companies, if they are the auditor of the big company that they already chosen, or if there must be one auditor company big enough chosen by the European Union, or if European Union would put in a group of lawyers that follow the activities of the companies, like our cluster management accreditation is the same auditors from European Union come to all companies and check a couple of days a year. Or then still the fourth possibility is that the national audit system will be put in place, like the university accreditation in Finland is. We have an accreditation service that is getting their finances from the Ministry of Education, but otherwise is not a part of Ministry of Education at all. So something like that can be also a way of checking this. But the directive writers think clearly that there is a possibility still to cheat somehow, and these big companies must be checked what they are writing in the reports and what the sources of the things are that they write in the reports. So somebody must also go to the company, to the place, and check the process. This is more or less what I wanted to explain to you. I don't know if this is enough from Austrian's side or if it's something that you want to ask, but this is the basic principle that I have. I know that there's another more research-oriented person coming to give you some of the details of this directive, but the principles are here. Why we have these, what is the idea of the value base of the European Union, and how it then works in the directive that we are mostly discussing.
Tauno, fantastic. Few questions to clarify. So, okay. Because I don't see any questions coming in the chat, and I think this is amazing. First of all, thank you so much for an amazing presentation. So now you gave us an overview, but if I'm an SME who is thinking like, okay, so what in practice does it really mean to me? What I have to comply? Do I have to do this audit? Don't I have to do this audit? So sort of, maybe you could talk a little bit now, from the perspective of the companies that we heard, yesterday. Yeah. What does it really mean to me in practice? And do I take action? Does it by obligation come to me? This a little bit, maybe explanation would be super helpful.
Okay. The complete text of the directive, of course, exists in the European Union Commission page. And I think it's that strange name of the directive of the European Parliament and so on is the name of the text. There is I think there's 70 pages or so of the directive. First thing might be to go and read it directly and skip the first 10 pages because the European Union, on the basis of this principle, basically the slides that I showed you before this, the Lisbon Treaty and such and such and such. On those bases, we give today the following directive. So from side page 10 or something starts the text what the big companies need to do. And the big companies, they go read that, they put their lawyers to read it. There are some lawyers that can read things in small company language that give a service of this, what you need to do. And actually we have this lady Kirsi here in Merinova who also knows how to explain this. And I think she starts from the EcoVadis tool direction that shows what must be there, what reports must be there and what evidence you must save. This is maybe the easiest way of starting to do that. And then a third way then is to try to go to one of the courses. I think the Chamber of Commerce at least have run courses in this, how to do, which are really kind of a couple of days of a course, and then you get an explanation how it works. But for all the companies that have an ISO 9000 or ISO 14000 or any of the ISO systems where you need to have an more or less annual reporting of your quality activities in your main processes, so I think this is quite easy still to follow. It just adds one more dimension to the quality of your product, the quality of your process, the environmental quality of your product, and then the quality of the treatment of your personnel. So that you do anyway the same processes. Your main processes with the personnel is hiring, treatment when they are working, and then the firing in the end. So that's not horribly difficult. The legal text makes it difficult.
Super. And then, and then another question about, there was a lot of this discussion about equal rights and so on and so forth. And we have another law in Europe, which is GDPR. How to combine those following, whom you have and so on and so forth, and then complying to GDPR as well?
The GDPR is a law that says that you're not allowed to save the names and other information of people if it's not important for your purposes. And then you must first make a declaration why you are saving this data file of these persons, what purpose it is, how long it will be in there, who has the rights to read it, and when you will destroy it. So Martina can put a list of people like you and me and Kirsi and write our birthdays and write our, if she explains to the GDPR people, to everybody who wants to see the data, why it's saved in this company. And basically the same works also with all kinds of projects and treatments of people. Typically, if you're hiring somebody, you are putting in an advertisement on the newspaper, you get 75 CVs in. And then you have to, if you really want to follow the GDPR, you have to have a process in place that says that for requirements, what is that called now? Employing people. Recruiting people, recruitments of people. If you are recruiting people, you will collect from them the following data, blah and blah and blah and blah. And then you have to remember not to collect the data that are in the julkisuuslaki in Finland, 8th paragraph number 8 of the publicity law. For example, the health status, the marital status, the sexual orientation, the religion, this kind of data you cannot put in there no matter what, how many people you have. But all the data that are relevant for your recruitment in a special task, you can save from these people for the time of the recruitment and maybe eventual recruitment if you know that you are going to need another person soon after. So you can save them for a bit extra time, and then you have to destroy that. So that actually is not a way of, it doesn't connect really to this equality of treatment. It connects to the safety of the data rather. But people who have a purpose for saving data, listing data of persons, they can do that if they have it in their process.
Excellent. Tauno, can you see the question in the Q&A section? There came one excellent question for you.
I see the hand of Leah, but I don't know if I can see the chat. Let's see chat.
It's not a chat, it's a Q&A. Let me read it for you.
Okay.
So given the recent decisions by the US to withdraw from the UNHCR and cancel DEI-related initiatives, how do you think such moves impact global DEI efforts and human rights advocacy? Also, companies like Amazon and Meta are shifting their policies in the line with the US governance, and how does it affect the branches outside the US, given the regulatory environment that we have?
I have got an idea that they are ending their DEI campaigns. They are not kind of taking away any of the legal rights from anybody, but there have been, for their business purposes or for the purposes of the, let's say, orientation of the owner, or just like the Google main slogan, don't be evil, whatever purpose. They have had a positive inequality campaign that they are taking. If they have 10 white Anglo-Saxon Protestant old male people applying for the work and one nice Greek lady who is bettering nearly everything, so they take that one Greek lady, they are treating the men unequally in this case, because they believe that they get a better working environment and better performance by hiring her instead of me and people like me. And they are now ending that has gotten in many of the organizations a bigger amount than the statistical average would be of the Nepalese or the Black African Americans or Canadians or whatever people they have been hiring this far. So I'm not really sure anything else is changing than the campaigns that they are running for getting a more diverse workforce are now ending. But they still might get diverse workforce because they might only be Nepalese and African American applicants to any jobs that they have.
See, and Kirsi put another link in the chat for everybody.
It's here in for the ESG reporting and the national legislation.
Yes, and I would invite everybody who has remaining questions to open their microphones now and really talk directly to Tauno. Tauno is there for you, so please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I would have a question actually. Thank you, Tauno, for the insightful presentation because I think it will be really helpful regarding solving our cases. I can actually connect the recruitment company in Hungary, and there we were obligated to ask for consent from the candidates in order to upload their CVs in the internal database, and they were there legally for 2 years if they have agreed to the consent. So that's basically how it worked at our workplace.
This is the option of doing it. Either you have a kind of declaration of the meaning of this storage of data that you have in your company, or then you ask everybody's permission for that purpose.
Yes, and we had different ways of collecting this consent. For example, if we got like a verification in a LinkedIn message, that was also a valid consent. So it's interesting how it works in practice.
In the beginning, that all of these things are okay until somebody takes them to the legal court. And then they read it in Hungarian, what it really says in the papers, and then they decide it is correct or incorrect. Something might happen, but of course, all kinds of companies think that they have all kinds of solutions that are correct. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the fact that you were mentioning that the breaches usually happen during the recruitment phase when it turns out that someone has been hired instead of the more suitable candidate just because of some biases from the recruitment team's side. How can this breach be identified if the recruitment company can justify their decisions in another way?
Yeah, in Finnish legislation, it's only the obligation of the company or organization to publish the criteria and the name of the people if it's the recruitment is done with taxpayer money. So the companies can avoid this. There might still be, for example, a discussion in Facebook or something where this pops up that the company is not following the good practices, but it's illegal for public companies. It's just a question of good practice in private companies. And there might even be in the papers that you said that they have you to sign that it's okay for them okay for you to give your CV to them to be saved somewhere in 2 years. They might also say that you are also hereby signing this to prove that you are not allowing any detail of the recruitment project to third parties or public listings or web pages or such. So the private companies are still much more safe from these breach clauses, but of course, if it becomes public, it's a bad brand experience, and the company brand can lose. So they might even listen to you when you send their complaint about this to the company.
Yeah.
Everything that you get back in email responses, if you get anything back in email responses, maybe builds some kind of case in the end that you can take into court.
Yeah, my question
of this one lady that said I told yesterday that one lady had applied to a job and got the response that at the age of 51 she's much too old for this job. So it became a huge kind of scandal in LinkedIn, where she explained that she is too old and had a picture there, and she didn't look too old in the picture, and there was a discussion which gave lots of bad publicity to the company. So sometimes it works, sometimes not. But the legal things in Finland are only for public companies, public organizations that must publish the criteria and the person who has been chosen.
I see. Thank you for your answers.
No problem. Anita also has a question.
Yeah, hi. Are you able to hear me? Hello?
Hey.
Yeah, so my question was, how do you ensure equality in payment of salaries to men and women, like how you have said, like most of the times when HR negotiates for a salary, it will be based on your last pay. But if you see inherently, in most cases, it is like the male gender always gets slightly more than the female. So the negotiation happens, if you don't get a proper start, it's but natural that over the period of your tenure, like the females will be paid less. How do we ensure that from the perspective of an employer, like if it's so probably basically what I want to ask is, if I'm in the HR position and if I want to ensure that I cannot go beyond a certain budget, but then how do I draw a middle ground kind of?
The let's say good companies at the moment, they have their principles of paying salaries open. So you come into this position, you get this salary no matter what happens, and even maybe make it public in the application in the newspaper. But there is no real way at the moment, because the salaries, for example, in Finland are not public. But EU directive that will make them public, it will make them obligatory for companies to release all the numbers of everybody's salaries if somebody asks. And typically the somebody who can ask is your shop foreman, the guy who's chosen by your shop union. So that person has the right to go and check the salaries of everybody after the directive has come into force, and it should be, I think, come to force in the beginning of next year. So after that, it's possible to check and make a legal case of that, but before that is a bit difficult.
Okay. Just to add on to that, if I may, like if somebody feels, that she is not paid right, like a company salary information is not publicized or it's confidential, then how do they compare?
Yeah, the responsive person in the shop union is the person to go and check with, because from there you should not have any reprisals coming to your direction. If you go to your CEO and complain, that maybe might mean that you are treated badly after that in other ways also. So even after the directive, I think it will work through the shop union. And the shop union, what's that called, representative maybe, has the right to go and check the salaries any day with the company, what the salaries are being paid to different people. And there is still some difficulty to show that the jobs are really comparable. That somebody has this kind of job and somebody else has this kind of job. They have the same title and they look a bit similar, but they might still be different for some reason. And maybe if one person has to do all the international tasks and the other person only works with the phone from the table, so that might be something that makes it correct to have different salaries to these people. But that is a question of all these directives, all the legislation, that it's written somehow and then it must be interpreted in a court in the end.
Tauno, but I think you're bringing two very important aspects that I would like to maybe clarify. So one thing is that, of course, in Finland, we have extremely unionized environment, right? Which is, for example, very different. It's not everywhere in European Union. So I'm Lithuanian, I come from Lithuania, but then we have pretty much zero unions active there, right? Whereas here, almost 70 or even 80% of workforce entirely is unionized. And when you are referring to this shop steward, you're talking that, people are in the union. But then basically, since the company cases that we're having, and that's, I think, very important to understand for our participants as well, that that's exactly why the law is not always working. Because when we don't have unions, when we don't have shop stewards in many other European countries, these legislations are very nice and they sound very good on paper. Now, sorry for be devil advocate, sort of, right? But in reality, there's a lot of holes in them, isn't it?
Yeah, there is basically two persons that you can contact. You can contact the shop union steward, or then you can contact a commercial lawyer. And you can basically also contact your employer, and if the company is good, the employer will listen to you and correct the problem. But not all the companies also are good, and this is why we have the shop unions and we have the lawyers that solve the problems where the worker is a small guy and the employer is the big guy, and the employer has decision-making power, and the only thing that the worker can decide is to go home. But I don't have any better solution to this, because laws are just written text until they are proven in court how it is to be interpreted in this situation is this country. And all the countries have different systems still. Anything more?
Any other questions? We're almost out of time. 2 minutes left with Tauno. It was an amazing session. Great.
Yeah, but the thing is that we are talking about only paper things. If it is on the paper, it can be validated. But if there is mismatch with the paper activity and original activity, it can be actually difficult to find out if until or unless any sufferer person complain. But if I'm not sure how much people will be that much courageous to complain to lawyer or these kind of formal authorities.
We will have now a third way of going through these social irregularities with the EU directive of obligatory reporting. It might be that you get the big company, even if it's not always their best interest to pay you more in a small company. So they might come to your help and force the small company to pay you correctly, rather than getting the negative brand influence in the reports of European Union that might affect the most important thing that any company director has, the value in the, what is pörssi in any language? Stock exchange market. Your valuation in the market can go down 20% if the investors learn from the scandal somewhere in your supplier chain. So that might be a third way of getting into this problem, and this is why I like the directive quite a lot. But still, I think that not all the problems in the world will be solved with this legislation. And that is unfortunate, especially for the people who are facing these problems in their daily lives.
Absolutely, and especially for those who are working in small and medium enterprises, right? And in that way,
and in the companies with no strong unions, and in the countries with far between the two policemen that are following that somebody follows the law.
Absolutely.
Or in a company where the policemen take paid instead of the company paying you for your work, they paying the policemen.
Absolutely. Tauno, I'm cautious of time. I'm pretty sure we would be very much interested to continue further, and there's a lot of discussion, lots of questions, but...
Here is 2 links here that then you get.
Yes, there are very good links in the chat. Three links in the chat.
One is not working.
And there are very good ideas that you brought already, right? So first of all, that we have legislations and we have legislations in the place, but they are applying very differently for bigger companies and smaller companies. And in that sense, it's clear that for smaller companies, a lot of things that we have in place are voluntarily applied,
The EU directive will gradually start to act on smaller companies in Europe.
Yes.
Companies that are active in Europe, that have production in Europe. But as long as you're outside of Europe, it doesn't help you much.
Yes.
But there will be, after 2025, I think it will go down to 50 people or more working in the company and so on. Or the foreign subsidy of the company that is 50 people or more. So it will start to, when they get the lawyers and accreditors working, the systems working in the countries that can do the checks of these reports today, they will come and also haunt the smaller companies.
So in that sense, it's good to prepare for what's coming, good to think of what's coming, and yet at the same time, we need solutions now, right? So for everyone who is building the solutions, the compliance and estimated compliance is very important. And yet you will see that, we have to find ways to encourage SMEs to avoid biases, to avoid these principles, to make this look for them attractive, not just from the compliance point of view, but also from their perspective, from the business motivation. So Tauno, thank you so much. A big round of virtual applause to you.